Walk into pretty much any local gun shop in America right now, and I'll bet you lunch you'll see the same exact scene. Certain guns just sitting there, way back in the display case, collecting a thick layer of dust like they've been abandoned. These are the platforms dealers honestly can't give away, even if they're offering a free 1,000-round case of brass-cased ammo and a premium optic on top of it. Because this isn't just unpopular. This is bottom-of-the-barrel engineering, straight-up disasters. We're talking safety recalls that'll make your skin crawl, mechanical failures that make you stare at the gun and wonder how it ever left a factory, and malfunctions so dangerous they could land you in a trauma center or put you in a federal prison cell. Today, we're peeling back the glossy magazine marketing fluff, and we're taking a hard, honest look at 12 specific firearms. 12 guns that have absolutely lit their own reputations on fire in 2026. We're counting them down from bad to absolute worst. And I'm telling you right now, that #1 spot is going to leave you speechless and probably a little angry. So do not even think about pulling out your credit card. Not until you hear what big box retailers are desperate to keep hidden from the average buyer. Number 12, Springfield St. Victor 308. Coming in at number 12, we've got a rifle that looks like a tactical masterpiece under the shop lights, but runs like an overpriced paperweight once you actually hit the range. The Springfield St. Victor, specifically the one chambered in .308 Winchester. Now look, I've spent plenty of time behind the St. series, and usually their 5.56 models run like a high-end sewing machine. But something went seriously sideways when they scaled that platform up to the heavier-hitting .308 cartridge. The main nightmare here is a terminal failure in gas system cycling reliability. Out in the real world, what people are seeing is chronic short-stroking, the kind that makes a bargain bin build look good. Because the dwell time and the gas porting are so poorly optimized, the bolt carrier group just isn't getting enough juice to complete a full cycle. So you're at the bench trying to print a group at 100 yards, and instead of a smooth semi-auto rhythm, you're manually running that charging handle after every shot. Like you're running some 19th century straight pull bolt gun, and this rifle is unbelievably picky about ammo. If you're not feeding it the most expensive, high-pressure, match-grade brass you can find, it turns into a single-shot malfunction machine. Constant stovepipes, double feeds, brass getting chewed up by the extractor, because the timing is just completely off-kilter. Dealers are seeing these come back within 48 hours of the sale, because guys are spending more time clearing jams than sending lead downrange. When you're dropping over $1,200 on something marketed as duty-ready, you expect it to function. Right now, these are sitting on shelves because the word is out. The gas physics on these things are a total crapshoot. Number 11, Taurus GX4. At number 11, we've got a micro-compact that was supposed to be the Glock killer for the budget-minded concealed carrier, the Taurus GX4. Now let's be real, Taurus has worked hard the last few years trying to clean up their reputation, trying to prove they can build a reliable striker-fired pistol. And when the GX4 hit, it honestly felt like they had a winner. Good ergonomics, a crisp trigger, and a price under $400 that made it an easy sell for an everyday carry gun. But then the floor dropped out. Reports started rolling in about a major drop safety failure, and it reminded everybody of the dark early days of the Sig P320. We're talking about a defect where, if the pistol is dropped at a specific rearward angle, the striker can bypass internal safeties and go bang, without a finger ever touching the trigger. For a gun designed to live inside your waistband, right next to your femoral artery and other vital real estate, that's not negotiable. That's a deal breaker. Taurus eventually issued what they called a voluntary safety enhancement. But in gun world language, that's corporate speak for, your gun might hurt you if you trip on the curb. Once that news hit the forums, the resale value didn't just drop. It evaporated. I've talked to dealers with racks of these sitting in the back, because they can't find a buyer willing to bet their life on a pistol that hasn't mastered the basic physics of staying safe when it hits the floor. When you're shopping a 9mm for self-defense, mostly safe is not the standard. And right now, the GX4 is radioactive on the retail market. Number 10, Henry Repeating Arms 4570, Government Lever Action. Coming in at number 10 is a real heartbreak for anybody who loves classic American iron. The Henry Repeating Arms 4570. Government lever action. For decades, Henry was the gold standard for frontier-style reliability. The kind of rifle you'd trust if something big and angry was coming through thick brush in the Pacific Northwest. But in early 2023, that legend took a hit it still hasn't recovered from. The company had to issue a voluntary safety recall because of a catastrophic firing pin defect. In plain range day English, these rifles were slam firing and having accidental discharges without anyone pulling the trigger. Picture this. You're on a late-season deer hunt, hands cold, walking through wet grass. You slip. You bump the stock of your $900 Henry on a tree or the tailgate of your truck, and bang, it launches a massive 400-grain slug downrange on its own schedule. Henry told dealers to pull every affected serial number off shelves immediately. But even after the firing pins were fixed and the factory gave the all clear, the damage was done. Because when your brand is built on traditional reliability, one recall tied to accidental discharges can erase a century of trust in an afternoon. Even used, you'll see these sitting at $700 or less, and folks still won't touch them. Hunters are jumping to Marlin or Winchester, because with a 4570, nobody wants to wonder if the rifle's going off the moment it gets set down too hard. Number 9, Bushmaster ACR. At number 9, we're talking about one of the biggest high-profile flops in modern tactical rifle history, the Bushmaster ACR, the Adaptive Combat Rifle. When it first hit, the marketing was everywhere. It was supposed to be the SCAR killer. Modular design, quick-change barrels, fully ambidextrous controls, and a non-reciprocating charging handle that sounded like the future compared to the standard AR-15. For a while, the hype was real. YouTube was full of glowing reviews, and it looked like something ripped straight out of a high-budget action movie. But then the wheels didn't just come off. They disintegrated. The rifle was massively overpriced, $2,000 to $3,000, for performance gains that were, at best, questionable. And then it got hit with a recall so severe, it practically buried the entire line. Engineers found a terrifying defect in the fire control group, a defect that could allow the rifle to fire multiple rounds with a single pull of the trigger. Now let's be crystal clear about why that matters. Under federal law, if your semi-auto rifle starts spitting bursts of 2 or 3 rounds, you're not holding a legal firearm anymore. You're holding an unregistered illegal machine gun, without the proper tax stamp and paperwork from the ATF. And that is a fast track to 10 years in federal prison, plus a permanent loss of your Second Amendment rights. Bushmaster had to recall every single ACR ever made, but the damage was already done. Between legal risk, the brutal price tag, and the company's eventual bankruptcy creating a parts drought, these rifles became poison on the secondary market. No dealer wants them, because no buyer wants to risk a felony to own a modular rifle that never lived up to its own press release. Number 8, Mossberg SA-410. Moving to number 8, we've got a specialized tool that managed to violate one of the most sacred rules in firearm safety, the Mossberg SA-410 turkey gun. Now, turkey hunting is patience and precision. Those birds have eyesight like a hawk, and hunters love the 410 bore because it's light, low recoil, easy to swing in thick timber where gobblers like to disappear. Mossberg tried to ride the wave of the sub-gauge turkey trend with this semi-auto, but they accidentally built a nightmare. They found a critical flaw where, during loading or unloading, if a shell was released just a fraction of a second too quickly, it could strike the bolt lock button with enough force to detonate the primer. Let that sink in. You're in the woods before dawn, fingers freezing. Maybe you've got thick gloves on. You're feeding shells into the magazine, and the gun just fires. No trigger pull. It bypasses the shooter's intent completely, and it goes off while your hands are right next to the action. That's not just a malfunction. That's a fundamental breach of the contract between the shooter and the tool. Mossberg issued a recall and offered a trigger group upgrade. But for a lot of hunters, trust doesn't come back. And in a market with rock-solid alternatives from other brands in the $500 to $700 range, nobody wants to gamble on a hole through their hand. Or worse, just to carry a Mossberg logo into turkey woods. These are sitting in inventory because, frankly, "It probably won't blow up while you're loading" is not a winning sales pitch. Number 7, Kel-Tec Sub-2000. At number 7, we've got a platform that used to be the undisputed king of the backpack gun category, the Kel-Tec Sub-2000. For years, this pistol-caliber carbine was a cult favorite because it literally folded in half. That made it a go-to for preppers, truck drivers, and anybody in a cramped apartment who wanted a long gun that could disappear into a normal bag. It was light. It ran common magazines like the Glock 17 or Glock 19, and it usually landed under $400. But in 2017, the brand took a hit that still makes dealers cringe when one shows up on trade. Kel-Tec discovered a catastrophic failure in their barrel heat treatment process. Now, if you're not a metallurgy nerd, here's the simple version. Heat treating is what helps steel survive the insane pressures created every time a round goes off. When that process is wrong, you're not holding a rifle. You're holding a pipe bomb. The recall showed certain barrels were so brittle they could rupture or explode during normal firing, sending jagged metal fragments into the shooter's hands or face. Even though it's been years and Kel-Tec offered replacement options, the used market has collapsed. When a buyer sees a sub-2000 on a rack for $300, they're not thinking, "Man, that folding trick is cool." They're thinking, "Is this the serial number that comes apart in my hands?" Dealers can't move them because budget is fine. Inexpensive is great, but explosive is a deal breaker. Number 6, F&M 249S. Moving to number 6, we've got a firearm that was supposed to be the ultimate trophy for serious military collectors. The F&M 249S. This is the semi-auto, civilian legal version of the legendary squad automatic weapon used by U.S. troops worldwide. FN promised the American market a belt-fed beast as close to the real deal as you could get, without needing a Class 3 dealer setup or a mountain of federal paperwork. But when you're asking people to spend $8,000 to $10,000 on one firearm, it has to be perfect. In January 2022, the dream turned into a nightmare. FN discovered a defective component deep inside the fire control group, a part that basically broke the hammer reset mechanism. In simple terms, after firing, the hammer might not reset correctly, leading to what the industry calls an unsafe firing event, which is corporate speak for the gun might do something you did not tell it to do, including potentially firing out a battery or malfunctioning in a way that turns it into a 10-pound paperweight. FN told every owner from that first production run to stop shooting immediately and ship the rifles back for surgery. Overnight, dealers watched their highest margin, premium showpiece become a liability, something they couldn't sell and couldn't even proudly display. Even today, with repairs completed, buyers hesitate to drop 5 figures on a rifle with such a public, fundamental failure right out of the gate. When you're paying decent used car money, you want legendary reliability, not a recall notice in the mailbox. Number 5, CZ600 bolt-action rifle. At number 5, we've got a rifle that was supposed to be the Swiss Army knife of the hunting world, the CZ600. When this was announced, it sent shockwaves through the community because of its modular design. The pitch was simple. Swap barrels yourself. Change calibers in minutes. No gunsmith. No shop visit. Hunt deer with a 308 in the morning. Then swap to 6.5 Creedmoor for long-range targets in the afternoon. Same chassis. Dealers ordered them in bulk, and every major YouTuber called it the future of bolt-action rifles. But in May 2022, reality hit hard. CZ issued a high-priority safety warning after discovering a design flaw that could turn the rifle into a grenade. If a user installed the barrel even slightly wrong, the rifle could still chamber and fire. Maybe the bolts weren't torqued to the exact inch-pound. Maybe a screw got cross-threaded, and the rifle would still go into battery and send it. During firing, that improperly seated barrel could fail catastrophically. We're talking tens of thousands of pounds of chamber pressure venting into the shooter's face and hands, instead of going down the bore. CZ's solution was to permanently bond barrels to receivers at the factory, or require authorized service centers to do the work, which effectively killed the modular feature people actually paid for. Overnight, the main selling point vanished. Dealers got stuck with inventory nobody wanted, because if you can't swap barrels yourself, it's just another average bolt gun, with a very dark history attached to it. Number 4, Kimber R7 Mako. Moving to number 4, we've got Kimber's first real jump into the polymer, striker-fired world. the R7 Mako. Now, Kimber built its empire on premium, hand-fitted 1911 pistols. So when they announced a micro-compact to compete with the Sig P365 and the Springfield Hellcat, people paid attention. The Mako had 13-round capacity, a surprisingly clean trigger, and that high-end Kimber finish that usually commands premium money. But the honeymoon ended fast. In February 2022, a major recall hit the R7 Mako before it could even get its fins wet. Kimber found a critical quality control defect in the firing pin safety block. That's the internal part meant to prevent firing unless the trigger is fully pressed to the rear. On certain defective units, that block could fail, potentially allowing the pistol to fire multiple rounds with a single trigger pull. Again, this is a concealed carry pistol that could accidentally become an illegal, uncontrollable machine gun in your hands. When you carry for self-defense, mechanical reliability isn't a nice feature. It's a requirement for life. And because this recall landed so early in the run, it poisoned the well. Even with fixed versions out there, customers would rather buy a proven Glock or Sig instead of risking their life or their legal freedom on a striker-fired Kimber experiment. Number 3, Sig Sauer Cross bolt-action rifle. Coming in at number 3 is a rifle that was supposed to be the backcountry hunter's dream. Instead, it became a liability dealers are desperate to get off their books. The Sig Sauer Cross. You have to understand the hype. Sig Sauer has a reputation built on duty-grade pistols and rifles, the kind military and law enforcement trust with their lives every day. So when Sig announced a precision, lightweight bolt-action rifle under 6 pounds with a fully folding stock, the mountain hunting crowd went wild. For guys hiking 10 miles into the wilderness, carrying every ounce on their backs, this sounded like the Holy Grail. But the celebration didn't last. Less than 12 months after the first units hit shelves, Sig Sauer issued a high-priority safety recall, and it sent shockwaves through the hunting world. The defect was nasty, a delayed firing event after the trigger was pulled. Here's why that's a nightmare. You're in the high country. You spot a trophy elk. You settle in, you squeeze, and nothing happens. So you assume misfire, or dud primer. You lower the rifle. You start to take your finger out of the trigger guard to check things out, and then, 3 seconds later, boom. The rifle fires on its own timeline, not yours. At that moment, the muzzle could be on the ground, on your leg, or on a hunting partner nearby. When you're paying $1,600 to $1,900 for a premium tool, you want a surgical instrument, not a ticking time bomb. Dealers still struggle to move these today, because in high-stakes hunting, if you can't trust the mechanical relationship between your finger and the firing pin, you don't have a tool. You have a hazard. That breach of trust in year 1 left these rifles sitting on racks, collecting dust, while hunters go back to proven bolt guns. Number 2, Remington Model 700. Coming in at number 2 is arguably the most famous bolt-action rifle in American history, and yet it's a pariah on a lot of store shelves right now, the Remington Model 700. Since 1962, millions have been sold to hunters, police marksmen, and military snipers, all trusting that out-of-the-box accuracy reputation. But a dark secret Remington allegedly knew for decades finally exploded into public view, and it nearly killed the company. The Model 700 has a catastrophic trigger defect that can allow the rifle to fire without the trigger being pulled. This isn't some new issue. Reports suggest engineers were warning about it as far back as the 1970s. For over 40 years, Remington kept selling rifles with the same flawed mechanism. There are thousands of reports of rifles firing when the safety was released, when the bolt was closed, or when the rifle was bumped or dropped. People were seriously injured, and some were killed, with 7.5 million rifles affected by the recall, and the company's bankruptcy making support even more complicated. The used market has cratered. You can find these as low as $300 now. But most dealers will tell you they're not worth the liability sitting on the rack. Number 1, Tisas 1911 pistols. And here we are. Number 1. The firearm dealers in 2026 absolutely cannot move. It's a budget import that hit the market like a storm, and then crashed hard. The Tisas 1911. These Turkish imports flooded the U.S. market with a tempting promise. All the classic 1911 vibes and performance. for a fraction of the price. A premium Colt or Springfield can run $1,200 to $2,000, but Tisas was selling similar-looking steel-frame pistols for $400 to $600. For the budget-conscious shooter, it looked like a steal. Until 2024 delivered a recall that validated every skeptic's worst fear about cheap imports. They found a major safety defect where the hammer could move forward and drop while you were simply chambering around. When you rack the slide to chamber, the hammer hooks and the half-cock notch are supposed to keep that hammer back. But on defective units, the hammer could fall with the slide, potentially causing a negligent discharge the moment you load the pistol. That defect destroyed the brand's credibility. Because it doesn't matter how affordable a 1911 is, if it risks putting a hole in your floor or your foot every time you load it. Dealers are stuck with them because once cheap becomes dangerous, the value goes to zero. These 12 firearms are proof of something every serious shooter eventually learns the hard way. A shiny brand name doesn't mean anything, and a bargain bin price tag doesn't mean anything. Not if the engineering fails you when it matters most. Before you drop your hard-earned cash on any firearm, do yourself a favor. Check the recall lists, dive into the owner forms, and always verify your serial numbers. Your safety and your life are worth a whole lot more than saving a few $100 at the counter. Make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Stay sharp.